I just think it's pretty amazingly cool to see a theater full of people, almost 300 people here to see a great film by the late, great Agnes Varda. So everybody give yourself a pat on the back for being here tonight. It's pretty amazing to celebrate films like this with so many people and in such a great setting. So I think it's one of the most special things about living in Austin, not just a special thing about AFS, but the fact that we're all here to kind of worship at the altar of cinema together. So thanks for being here. As you saw from the trailers, we have a bunch of other great films playing in this series. So we're almost to the middle of it this week. So we hope that you'll continue to join us for Jules in the Wasteland, revisiting the films from the 80s that kind of define that decade differently than you may hear about in popular culture. And of course, it is programmed and hosted by Richard Linklater, so I hope you will now join me in welcoming Richard Linklater, Artistic Director of the Film Society. And to remind you, we will be here afterwards. Part of this series is that we talk about the films afterwards with you. As I think Criterion said, these conversations are very, very, very casual. I think they use 3 berries, so which is great. What we're doing is involving you in those conversations, so we want to hear what you think about the films, and we'll be here on stage afterwards. So thanks for doing this, Rick.
Oh, thank you, Holly, and I so look forward to talking after with Holly, francophile that she is. When we booked this film, I wanted to see this again for many years. I saw it twice when it came out, back at the Varsity Theater, and I haven't really seen it since. It really left an impression on me, but I realized I hadn't really seen it over the years. So it was definitely a title we were trying to get for this series. So it was one of the reasons we did this kind of addendum to the series, was to see Vagabond again. And when we booked it, I had no idea it would be our memorial screening to Miss Varda. That she passed away, as you all know, in late March. So this is our tribute to her. A quick coda from how many of you were here last week for Local Hero? Okay, that's just enough that I won't waste too much time, but Joe Dishner let me know one really interesting fact. Who was Bill Forsythe's first choice to play Happer, who Burt Lancaster played? Willie fucking Nelson. Can you believe that? It would have been a whole different movie. He knows Dennis Bishop, who was the production manager for the Texas wing of that. And apparently Putnam and Forsythe went backstage at Billy Bob's in Fort Worth, the great venue of that era. And Willie's security team, security teams, they're always assholes. They treated him poorly, these British gents. And they eventually got a script to him, and Willie called up and said he wanted to play it, but he had already gone on he said no. He had his chance. But so Burt wanted to go to Scotland and play golf. Anyway, so enough of that. We're here for Vagabond and Miss Varda. I don't know, is there a cooler film? I mean, we'll talk about this after, and this is my question for the evening we can discuss later. Is Agnes Varda, is she the coolest filmmaker ever? I think she might be. It's a short list, and I know she's on it. I'm just wondering if she's at the top, or even as a older lady, she had a great 80s. She started young, and she was making films to the very end. This little, fiery woman, and even remember how cool she looked. Even her hair, she was kind of gray, but she would have that red ring where she died. She just everything she did was so herself, and just love her so much. It always bugged me that you would hear her referred to as the godmother of the French New Wave. And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? She's 2 years older than Godard. How can you be a godmother if you're 2 years older? The thing she did was she started before them. And this is, if you want to be inspired, go online, look at pictures of Varda when she was in her mid-20s. She wasn't writing for Cahiers du Cinema. She wasn't like a traditional film nerd. She was a photographer who films just kind of popped in her head as an extension of her own, photographic eye, curiosity, deep empathy, everything she brought, to her cinema, and she just started making films. She just did it. She just went and did it at age 25, and in the mid-50s. So she predated, those guys making their films 59, 60, their new wave kind of kicked off then. So she was just ahead of them in a way. And I guess she was different too, because you think of her as much more kind of experimental in a way. Her narratives, not I mean, they were too, but she was even more radical and, more, left bank, I guess you'd say. She was more with the Chris Markers and the Marguerite Duras and, all them. Just, what she brought to her films was, and she did these essays and documentaries, and she brought fiction films with, she brought these documentary elements into it, like tonight's film. But what I consider such a pure cinematic artist is she never has the tropes of other art forms. She's never like theatrical, or you can feel she's not working off some paradigm of old theater or everything that's been done before. She, like her very first film, you say a lot with that first film, La Pointe Court, her first film that she did when she was 25. It's just a radical idea that would only work in film and would never survive like Hollywood note sessions, like none of her films. But it was like two films parallel, Young Lovers and then this kind of neo-realistic film from a village in France, and they don't meet. They just, you're cutting back and forth, and we're taught, they're gonna, the two lovers meet, but no, she goes the whole film with that. And they are related, and then maybe at the end, I forget, but they sort of cross paths geographically, but that's a radical ass idea, but it works in the head of the viewer. You could only do that in film. Like, she wants you to experience what she's feeling for these two different worlds, and they do live under the same roof, of a film. So she do that so effortlessly in all her films. They're just truly beautiful and radical. Tonight's film, I think it was her biggest success, but like I said, it's a fictional story, but she brings these documentary elements to it. I think with this film, Vagabond, we're following her, and she is the narrator of this search for who was this young woman who we find right off the bat. She doesn't build up to any drama in that way. She lets you know, she wants us to know that this young woman found in a ditch, frozen to death, and she wants us to go on that journey to kind of find out who this young woman was. And the only clues we get are the people she encounters before, leading up to this doomed ending that we know is real. And the people in the movie don't know that she's dead. That's kind of the conceit. I think she says in the narration. But so we get their kind of, their unvarnished opinions and views of this young rebel, this young rejecter of society, this teenage girl who, it's tough out there. When you reject society, you pay the transgressor's price. Society rejects you, and these people she encounters, it sort of runs the gamut between people who try to help her, maybe give her advice, sometimes very cautionary. There's the concern for her, but on the other end of the gamut, a young woman, you can't help but feel like, for a certain percentage of population, she's prey. And she's completely expendable, this young woman without ties, no clear ties. We barely know her name. We know she's Mona. The people don't seem to know her name. One of them does, I think. And so we're kind of asking ourselves, who is this? Who is this young woman? And what brought her to that fate? So it's a beautiful exploration, and I think she's asking us to take those clues and run with them and bring all our own empathy and understanding and critique too, I guess, toward it. So it's kind of a documentary quest in a narrative situation, and incredible performance by Sandra Bonner. She won a ton of awards for this performance. I think she was 17 when she did this. It's a really brave, strong ass performance, and she's not like a victim. She wouldn't see herself as a victim. She's not always her own best friend, but she just finds herself in these situations that it gets kind of grungier and dirtier, and it's just tough out there. It's a tough path she's clearly chosen. So I could gab on, but I look forward to just seeing this film again after 30 plus years And I'm really just, so curious to see what we all have to say about it after. And like I said, I look forward to being up here with Holly after. So, okay, thanks so much for being here. We'll talk to you after.
I wanted you to.
I forgot that last, God, what a death scene, huh?
Yeah, I wanted you to talk about the last shot because it's just like, it's.
Oh man, the ultimate end to a movie. Everybody thinks about doing that, but no one quite ever pulls it off. She sure as hell did. Man, to introduce it, such a, I don't know, the structure of the movie is so interesting. To start with that, so we know it's coming, and then just work backwards, and then, if you go to the Criterion channel, everybody here have the Criterion channel? You should. I recently saw a documentary. Varda goes back, and I think she did it maybe 15 or so years after this. And she even shows, she's really so cool that way. She revisits earlier work, or she did a film about, her husband's, the 25th anniversary of Young Girls of Rochefort, and she kind of just goes back and revisits her own work, I think, as her own process, her own, I don't know, inquiry into,
her art and life are
they're so intertwined
in this way, and that so her revisiting of the films is like revisiting a different self.
And old friends, so many of the actors in this movie are people she met along the way. I mean, she's such a on-the-ground artist, like she met all these people and incorporated, a lot of them are playing some version of themselves, non-actors. The the guy who's a philosopher, who's the farmer, he really was that. The Tunisian worker, she revisits him, and at that time she thought he was pretty lonely. He was kind of alone and working. And 15 years later, he's got a wife and 3 kids, and so it's really a sweet movie. But she said she did 2 takes. That's the kind of scene you would really ask an actor if it worked, if there was nothing wrong technically, you would want him to do that once, maybe trip and fall in such a realistic way that looks like maybe that is an injury on top of freezing and everything else that's wrong with her. But she did 2 takes, and she showed that she found the take she didn't use and explained why she used that one. But just the way her arm wasn't bracing for the fall, and the way her cape kind of came up, thought she looked like a winged, like a bird falling or something. It was beautiful, but man.
It's sort of like with that last stare, like finally confronting her own humanity and asking us to confront that too.
She said she wanted her eyes open.
Right, and it's such an unusual protagonist. I think that's something that is just fascinating about the choice of this film to embark upon a project like this. Is like you have to think that we had known nothing about her except that she's dirty and just sort of an outside of society, and then asked to follow this lead. And I think it's particularly unusual to see a female in this type of role, and especially at that time. There's so many films that have come after so now we're more used to it, but at the time I think this was pretty revolutionary to see nothing more about her than she's defying what a female character is supposed to be.
Yeah, I guess the beatnik notion of on the road, it was kind of a male thing, so lonely guy on the road, it's a very male genre probably. So gosh, you feel for her. I'm sitting there thinking like, well, what is freedom? You're just asking yourself this. What does it mean to someone? It's clearly a class thing. She went to vocational school. She has this impulse to be on the road, but is she trusting too much in the world? It's sure getting cold outside.
Yeah, like the world's got nothing for her.
Yeah. Gosh, she's so good in this too.
The character has this way, of talking, which is like I don't know if folks got this, but she has this really playful way of speech. Like she talks in puns frequently, and
that doesn't really come out in the translation.
No,
so
I noticed
tell
that
us from
with
a
the
French-speaking
translation. Well, I mean, the thing that she's saying a lot is bread for bread, which kind of works, but it's wheat for bread in French. So when she has money, but she has this playful way of speaking, and then also she has an incredibly crass dialogue. So she's like, oh, the thingamajig, like, you know, like this kind of like really teenager speak, really rough. And so it's just another thing that removes from the people she's with. She doesn't have this aura or there's no pretense, none at all.
Yeah, she hasn't been socialized in the niceties. She's lacking all that. And then you just think of what's her background. That's another layer of, you know, tragedy, probably what she's running from. You just imagine a certain home life that you have to get away from, you know, at all costs. And in a way, we do pick up more about her, you know. She's very honest at times, to just, you know, not very revealing, but you do learn little things about her. So.
One little thing that Varda says about picking Sandrine Bonnaire was that she had her own backstory kind of led to playing a character that is so difficult and requires so much. She had a really difficult family background, and then also had been, you know, her first film was with Maurice Pialat, who's like very demanding of his actors when she was 15 years old. In that film, she's sort of very sexualized, and she's thrown into this adult world of filmmaking when she's 15 years old. And so both in her family and in what she sort of entered into as an artist, kind of hardened her in a way that Varda saw this sort of rage and thought that she could play this character.
Kind of that tough edge, chip on the shoulder, like, you know, I'm going to stand up for myself. And the French title, isn't it doesn't it translate as no roof overhead and no law or something?
Without a roof and without laws, but it rhymes, which is perfect for her because this is the way she talks. Sans toi ni loi.
Right. Vagabond's a pretty good title, too. Yeah. As far as the translation, you know, sometimes they get it really wrong. But that's a pretty good title. It's a pretty good poster, too, of her. I think that's why this film did well in the day. You just saw this kind of intriguing looking, you know, it was kind of a striking image.
Well, unlike her other films until now, because at the time, there were so many years where Varda's films were just not commercially successful, and the last few documentaries kind of traveled and did well, but up to this point...
In her 80s,
Yeah, right, and up to this point, they hadn't, and then this film in France had over 1 million entries, which is, you know, here we talk about grosses in France, it's how many people showed up. Slightly better, I think we're going to talk about. But it's, so over 1 million people came, which is huge.
Yeah, that's
and
big
so I was wondering, like, at the time, was it sort of this film about who is this new generation, kind of thinking about, you know, there was the interest in, you know, what is these kids today, what are they up to, kind of with the Vagabond poster and this.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of interest in her in particular. But I remember the story being, you know, Varda herself. She was like, oh wow, she's made this great movie, and she was always kind of there. But I think people were pulling for her to have a more commercially viable film like that. She's such an intriguing career. I love all her films, the ones I've seen, and I'm not a completist. She did so much, you know. But I like. You know, she seemed to always just do what was interesting in front of her. You know, whatever. Her LA films are pretty great. If you've seen any of those, one on murals, and she did like a narrative film, kind of, that's a sister film. Or there's one called like Documentary.
Yes.
With her own son, isn't it? It's great. It's just this beautiful poetic essay, but there's kind of the grungy part of, I guess, Venice, California. They're just living kind of cut of a single mom, little boy, cut above homeless. You know, she had this thing of getting so real and just into that so quickly in a lot of her subject matter. But in a real, is it ease or upset? I don't want to go too far in it, but like mortality plays in so much of her work. Mm-hmm. And she really was always confronting that from the get-go, you know, her early films. Yeah. And even in life, I heard that just in the last year, you know, people who spent time with her, she's like, yes, I'm in the last year of my life. Very matter of fact, she had cancer. So she just spoke of it really openly.
And also, I mean, the last films, they feel like final words.
Yeah.
Like, what do I need to say before I
I know, they're
Get out of here.
retrospective and so sweet, so like full of life. And so, yeah, it was great to see her get that acclaim that so many others had got. I think she was always respected, but like, I don't know, just getting honorary Oscars and stuff like that was cool. As goofy as that can be, I thought it was cool.
Yeah,
for her.
yeah. I mean, it's, and I think she seemed to think it was cool too, because I do think at a certain level there was probably some sense of, I'm not getting all the respect I deserve. I don't know. Which I think is true.
You know, I think she was so classy. She didn't say that, but how could she not?
Right.
Look what went to the men of her generation and didn't go to her. Look at the credit she didn't get. Look at that. But she seemed to wear it. You know, she seemed to.
It was like she had more important things to worry about than credit.
Exactly, yeah. You said you YouTubed it? You saw her?
Yeah, her receive her governor's award.
I was actually, I was there, you know, I had to be there, I didn't want to be there.
That was a silver lining, right?
Yeah, that was goofy, but I was like, oh, Agnes Varda and Charles Burnett were getting honorary Oscars. I didn't really like that, because they took the honorary Oscar, that was always kind of the highlight to me of Oscar ceremonies, like for a long time when I watched them, because they'd always have like, you know, some Satyajit Ray or Altman, or, you know, and it was it showed the Academy that industry organization actually cared about like movie history and stuff. So of course they put that to the non-televised fall fundraiser Oscars, which is what the governor's awards are. You know, it's just kind of a private industry thing where they buy tables and you kind of have to, you know, film people with films out. Kind of, I don't know. I'm a little cynical about that. And then, you know, audiences giving standing ovations to artists they've seen none of their films. I was sitting next to a guy, and you know, here's Charles Burnett gave a wonderful speech, and everybody's giving him a standing ovation. I'm like, how many people in this room have seen Killer of Sheep? Like 4%, you know, tops. You know, that's how I felt a little bit about Varda. With Agnes Varda, they were really over the top about what a great feminist, you know, icon she was, and all that. It was great, and I was glad she was happy. It was just a little, you know.
Yeah.
It's just a little. Coming in that room, I don't really trust it.
I watched the French coverage of the red carpet, and they managed to like get all of the actors who might know who she was to come and speak to the French television, and everything was pretty. I was like, okay, but then you do have that idea of like there's such a massive body of work, and how much of that crosses over to Hollywood awareness? Not very much.
Well, you know, since you're not making them money, you know, if you're not cracking that too much, you're not really real. But, you know, with her passing, as sad as that is, I think it does kind of wake some people up to go, oh, maybe I should go back and check out that work. Why is everybody talking about her? Or why is this outpouring? So,
I mean, I think her work is it's groundbreaking on so many levels, but the thing that always engages me so much when I see it is how she just envisioned a different type of personhood or characterhood, I guess, for female characters. It's just the way that she says there's a full life behind this person. You can't just like have this female character serve this particular role for this story. That these are a full person and life here, and in a way that is really revolutionary. And I think particularly in the next film is Jane B by Agnes V, and it's Jane Birkin, who is, you know, everyone knows as a model and a muse, and she takes that muse piece and she completely turns it on its head playfully by creating these portraits of Jane Birkin that go so much further into who Jane Birkin is as a person and sort of strip away the superficial aspect of her. And I think you can see that it's a very direct way that she does that in Jane B, but it happens in every film.
Well, just her presence, you know, what she's doing, the story she's telling, just that alone, insisting on that. Because let's face it, the history of cinema is mostly, you know, women are projections of men, or they're serving a narrative purpose in relation to men, but it's not all about them. Or if it is, it's some weird male projection of a type, or, you know, you never really get a lived in, I mean, you do, but not, you know, to the extent that she's offering up.
Yeah, and she challenges that conceit, you know, in Cleo from 5 to 7, like that's a great, you know, way of saying here is the female character that you're used to seeing now. We're gonna take that superficial piece away from this character.
And the guts to have such an imperfect, you know, flawed character. If this would have been done by most men, they would have kind of gone the other way and made it very sentimental and made her, you know, much more sympathetic. And, you know, by the book, and, you know, she just is like, fuck that. You know, she's a really complex person. We don't know why is she shooting herself in the foot here? Why she grants her the full spectrum of human complexity that is rarely offered. So, and she wasn't like I don't think, you know, she wasn't like and she came through that era, 60s, 70s.
Yeah.
But I don't know if she wasn't like a feminist, like theoretician, or, you know, she wasn't that, but I think just her presence, I mean, she was that, and she just wasn't, and she's definitely political, you know, she made a lot of political movies, her documentary, she did a film on the Black Panthers, she did a film on, you know, she was out there and into it, you know, whatever grabbed her interest and she was passionate about. But I think she was so strong she didn't have to, you know.
Yeah, it's more like the idea of personhood.
Yeah.
That you know, this isn't. I mean, it's so beyond political to deny somebody the full existence of being human, and to her, that's the great pleasure of making art, is the complexity of and difference that you find in each person. And I think that's sort of why we get all these lonely characters, because it's sort of like everybody's an outsider because we're all so unique, and you see that again and again in her films too.
Yeah, I just love her approach to people. You know, the fact that she would so boldly work with people she just met, or these non-professional actors. You know, this film, it's a mixture, but her other films too. I think she had that, like, trying to include others in her art, what she was doing. She was very generous with it, you know.
And kind of an ethnographic interest too in the places that she went to, like
Very
deeply
much.
Exploring the culture and trying to, and that maybe comes from that photography. How can you capture that?
Mm-hmm.
How can you capture a deep background in a single image? But
yeah, you see it in your mural documentary, her did that LA. She's kind of lands in LA. What was she doing in LA before?
well, there was this whole. I think it was
Demi
because of
doing
Demi.
something?
Yeah, it was. He was sort of my next after. I forget after which film it was, but he was like lured out to LA with that small group because Antonioni was out there at the same time.
Yeah.
And so there was this whole like little group of European directors that were kind of all friendly, and they all hung out, and they were all like gonna make it big in LA. And of course we know what happened.
Big mistake. Never works. It'll kill you. It has many. You know, the ones who do well, who actually can come from other countries, go to Hollywood and not get totally eaten up and maybe make a good movie or two, like Australians.
Yeah.
They do a little better. That's just my superficial observation. Europeans just get crushed. Yeah, because I think they're kind of polite. They don't really understand. Like, Australians know when you're bullshitting. They know a liar. I'm just talking shit. But this is my stupid theory. I've just seen it. I've seen it too much. You know, Europeans go there and they don't know, like, they're being lied to, or they follow protocols, which is a huge mistake. You know, that won't get you anywhere. And they want you to rebel and make your own. I've met some, you know, just out there, they just have this glazed look in their eye. I'm like, go back home, make a noise. You know, and 10 years later, they do. It's like, yeah, it can be brutal.
A few good ones from that period, but
yeah, it happens.
it didn't last.
Yeah, I think there's always been that allure, you know. The weather's nice.
Well, also the idea that you can get a whole lot of money.
Yeah, you can get real money to make a movie, but it really never much works out. It's not like the Hollywood system of the 30s and 40s that was an open door to so many European immigrants who came in and made great movies, had great studio. The studio system worked like that. the system since the 60s on, they were bad timing, that whole group, it really wasn't, it was less open, I think. So yeah, she was just hanging out there, but immediately she was in the interesting neighborhoods and making cool films about that. So. And I guess she was raising the kid. He was little. He's in that one movie. He's so good.
Matthew.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I remember watching the movie and going, it's such what a unique kid performance. He must have kind of said, oh, he's got to be her kid.
Yeah.
It's just too, yeah. So.
Her daughter, I think, was born out there as well. So Rosalie, and then Rosalie Varda sort of works on Demi and her their archive, and so their films will stay alive through the kids' work.
Yeah, and you can see a bunch on. I mean, there's still a lot. There's not. You go in a video store, and there's often not a Varda wall.
Yeah.
There'll be others, and it's not so much because the video store saying we don't respect her. It's like, give me the DVD to put there. Right. Give me the video. They're just not. The availability is iffy on so many of these. So.
And on Jack Demi's films as well.
Yeah,
both of them.
strangely.
Yeah.
What a couple, huh? Her film about him is really wonderful.
So great.
Yeah.
Well, her documentary, and then there's the narrative, Jacques de Nantes, which is
that.
That's a narrative film that follows his childhood, and you sort of see the films that he made through the biography of him. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I haven't even seen that.
Yeah.
What year was that? Hard to.
I think also 90s. So yeah, it was in the 90s. Yeah.
So much.
We get
she
some?
still has to.
Yeah.
She still has to offer. When an artist passes, you go, oh gosh. I remember feeling that way when Fassbinder died. It's like, God, I made 40 films. I've seen 4 of them. I'm gonna have a long way to go. I feel that way with Agnes Varda too. There's still a lot out there
and the short films,
seen.
you can't get the short films anywhere. There's shorts that I haven't seen that I'm eager to find.
Well, hopefully they'll be more available.
Yes.
They're all great. Every single thing she turned her gaze to is worth checking out because she did it. Like if she's interested in it, you can feel it. There's something very cool and passionate. There's an enthusiasm and curiosity. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, unrestrained curiosity.
Yeah.
Like, this is, if it's worthy of my attention. This is like these little strange things about life are worthy of my attention. I think that's so unique.
It wasn't the big things. It was these little things,
Little things about people, little things about the world.
She had that vibe to her, she had her expressive vibe. She was so like, she's just funny. And I'll never forgive Godard at the end of, like, what the fuck was that? Anyway, just that he made her feel bad. I was like, what an asshole.
Yeah, for those of you who haven't seen Faces, Places, we won't give it away. But
I don't know if it's the final
it's
thing.
not, but
you are kind of leading up to
yeah.
it. He leaves her some cryptic note on the door. Whatever.
Still alive, Godard.
That is a sweet film, though, they made in the early 60s, that little pseudo-silent film.
Cleo from
Yeah, you can watch the whole thing, and he takes it, because no one's ever seen him without his glasses, come on. But he's got, he plays like Harold Lloyd in that movie, so he's got this long face that, that's him. So it's worth checking out.
Should we get some thoughts
Yeah.
on this
We're
film?
just sitting here.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
So I kind of had 2 questions, sort of. So she starts off the movie by kind of saying that she thinks she came out of the ocean, right? Do you think that there's some sort of religious theme there? Because that's how I sort of took it, but I didn't think the rest of the movie matched up with that necessarily. And also, I was wondering what you guys thought the purpose of the rape scene is, because it sort of comes out of nowhere. It's not really mentioned again, and I like the movie overall a lot. I just wasn't sure about the placement of that scene in particular.
So comment for the camera about her coming out of the ocean in the beginning, and then
I
the
think
rape
she
scene.
had a conscious visual metaphor of her coming out clean, ocean, clean, saltwater, out of the ocean clean, and then look how progressively grungier and dirtier, and then the final insult when she's attacked in that town by those tree people and the wine, whatever that ritual they're doing in their community. But look how she's at the end, you know, so I think she saw that as a through line of she just got progressively dirtier. So I guess you can't start any cleaner than coming out of the ocean nude, you know, so. But I don't think that's religious. It didn't have any of that in my thinking.
No, I didn't read it that way either.
Nah.
I don't read too much of her stuff as very tied to religion.
To any
She's sort of
kind
an
of-
outside
Yeah.
of traditional symbolism thinker.
Yeah, she's just like what makes sense to her.
Mm-hmm.
And the rape scene is all the more horrific that it's just another day in her life, you know? Someone like that has no recourse. What, she's gonna go to the cops and they're gonna do anything for her? Hell no. You know, just how vulnerable she is. And I don't think she had to show, you know, it is weird the way it just kind of pans away and you're in a tree like that, but.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like it's just so much indignity that
Yeah,
this lifestyle has to endure. And I mean, I think, and there's these different little indignities along the way, sort of her
Yeah,
being
always.
a
Yeah.
being a object, you know, for the people who are incredibly nice to her, she's still really objectified.
yeah, she's this other,
Yeah.
you know, and even though their impulses are, you know, the woman who picks her up hitchhiking really obsesses on her.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's sad, like they're maybe trying to help her, but she's so other, you know, they're kind of afraid of her.
Yeah, there's sort of an honesty to all of it, but the narrator isn't willing to sort of bear that indignity, and which seems like why the camera's moving away. But but I think it's an important scene because it's so honest, just like everything else
brutal,
in the film.
You know, she's resistant, but.
There was another comment over here, yeah.
So I've always thought of the whole sea thing as like her emerging from like a sea of memories, the whole story told in flashbacks. That's my take.
That's nice.
Sea of memories.
Yeah.
I like that.
So the promo picture for the Cannes Film Festival this year has a striking image of Agnes Varda standing on top of a male assistant to get a look through a camera.
She's on his shoulders.
That's right, yeah. So you've seen it.
She was pretty short.
Yeah, that too, right? Some find it really ironic that she's being used for the promo, especially when there's only 4 women directors competing this year and only 3 last year. With all this in mind, and of course with her departure from this earth in mind, who are some noteworthy contemporary women filmmakers and directors carrying the torch, so to speak, that we should have on our radars?
So many.
I know the people at Cannes were there in LA that night, and they loved her to death, and you know they were very close. So she didn't have a pitch.
She couldn't have been more beloved by the French film community.
Yeah,
I mean,
they really-
especially like in the last 20 years of her life. I think she was absolutely, I do think that there is a discussion to have about her not receiving due credit for the historic role that she played and also just for having this incredible voice. I think there is I think things would have been different if she had not been a woman, but I do think that she's fully embraced by the
but let's
French
not
film
forget,
industry.
she wasn't making pleasant narrative. She's an experimenter. Name 4 other experimental filmmakers who got a lot of acclaim. I mean, she really is. She's really much more non-traditional. So you're not going to find that male or female anywhere. You know, male experimental filmmakers die all the time, and you know, and you just it's the genre she's in. She did it with a lot of. She just did a lot of different things, and she did it really well. But the question about female directors, I don't know. I think it's a good time. You know, there's a lot of people. You know.
There's so many French female directors too, and the industry has done such a great job. Well, not such a great job, but there's like a lot more new female directors coming out. I don't know why enough of them aren't at Cannes. I mean,
It's a good time.
Celine
Yeah.
Sciamma is there this year. She's amazing. We've had Claire Denis, who's the president of Uncertain Regard, who has been many times.
Jane Campion's on awards. She's
yeah.
been the head of the jury. You know, she's so great.
There's a few that make it, but it's true that Cannes is just this odd
Sophia
situation
Coppola's-
that they
she's
only
done
have
well.
with a female director. It's odd that it continues to be the competition continues to be so male. It doesn't make a lot of
Yeah.
sense.
But I mean, that goes back to the worldwide industries. You got to put films up for, I doubt the submissions are 50-50, put it like that.
That's true.
You
That's
know,
true.
so-
But other festivals have done just such a better job, and there are those films out there. And then, like
Yeah.
when Claire Denis makes a film and then it's not playing, it's just I don't know. Sometimes you never know. You never
Yeah.
know unless you're inside.
And
the
I don't know
room,
why
but-
that festival's any more special than any, whatever.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't like that festival that much.
A couple more comments, yeah, right down here. Take you and then, yeah.
Oh,
Sure.
Oh, I just, when you talked about the documentary field, there's one interesting aspect that the caretaker seemed to break the fourth wall. Like, you weren't interviewing her, also she just stopped and addressed.
When Yolande Moreau, the Yolande character, when she's doing directing.
She just kind of like turns and then actually addresses, whereas the other characters just seemed like they
I
were
know.
being interviewed.
It's funny how
They were like actually talking.
I had forgotten in my mind 30 whatever years later. I thought they were all direct address. I guess since there's few, and then I realized watching the film, oh, actually they're in kind of narrative situations. They're with someone, or they're not actually documentary. They're just like, and then a jumping off place for the flashback. So it was odd the few times you did get a direct address to camera. So my favorite is the very last one, the Tunisian, guy, where he doesn't say anything. He just smells it and looks at it like, oh fuck, I know it's coming. Oh, those eyes, man.
I think it just is character by character, right? Because she's the type of person
Yeah.
that's almost like it's almost like she's walking around that house talking to herself, because the lady is also kind of talking to herself. So they're
Yeah.
like existing on their own, and so she's got to talk to somebody. She might as well talk to herself.
What a great scene with old Granny, as she calls her, who can barely see. I love when she finally gets close enough. You're not. She was great. In that documentary that you should see about this movie, 15 years later or whatever, she does talk about that actor who wasn't an actor. She had put her in a photo thing. She was the only elderly woman who had agreed to be photographed nude or something. And they show a picture. And then, she just liked her and wrote her a letter, said, hey, I have a part, will you play? And she's like, yeah. So it's a little tribute, a little mini tribute within this documentary to her. So it's good to take that in, I think.
There was another comment? No? Let's see. Yes. Person, yes.
Yeah, okay. So I'm heavily invested in the subject between pilgrimage and a wandering. And I feel like that's really illustrated in the dichotomy between the philosopher and Mona. And he has this really great line where he says, you read trash, you're still a dreamer. And I was wondering if you had any commentary on the state of the dreamers when this was filmed.
Because, it's weird. He sees dreamer as not a positive, right?
Yeah.
He says. And he's a philosopher.
And he has that whole withering, not wandering
Yeah.
line too, which I think speaks to your interest in sort of pilgrimage versus wandering. I wonder if any aspect of what she's doing is a pilgrimage.
Yeah.
You could look at it, you could look at certain aspects of this like self-exile as a pilgrimage, but it's an interesting question.
I thought the whole time about freedom, like the freest I ever felt was just like having a room and my rent paid and not having to do much else. Do you have to, that impulse to wander and dream, like that's her version of freedom. And it's her choice. It's her, you can be a dropout anywhere. This is how you approach it. But I don't know. I don't think I have any any deeper insights. I think that's all. There's never been a cool time really to be like that. People romanticize the 50s beatniks or 60s hippies, or you're always gonna be outside if you're not part of the economy. If you've said fuck you, like I said in my intro, you say fuck you, it says fuck you back. You have to you have to be able to have a shell around you of some kind. And she's just, I keep coming back to the word vulnerable. She's making herself so vulnerable, out there, which brave, but it's a tough world, especially in the winter. Shit.
And yet there's these like little moments of grace where you're like, you only have this because of your freedom. Like you're only able to have this special moment with this person because of your freedom.
Yeah, there's little bits of bliss, things she would never experience. She's, if you have an oppressive upbringing with the sameness all the time, she's putting herself, she's meeting all these people, and there's highs and lows of that. So I think the philosopher guy, the farmer, he might be trying to, like, in a tough love kind of way, even though he doesn't really know her at all. I think he's trying to, that's what I thought by cautionary. I think he's trying to, like, challenge her in some way.
Mm-hmm.
He's not doing it very gracefully, but I think he is. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, time for just a couple more. I saw this one in the back, and then we'll get you.
Yeah, with the farmer, I was just like, oh, he's trying to save her, but she really doesn't want to be saved in that way, and that really frustrates him, I think. He's like, oh, here's your potatoes, and you can do your thing, but she's like, oh, not for me.
Yeah, here's your freedom. It's like, I don't want that kind. I want a job. It sounds like a job to plant all those potatoes. It's a romantic notion. Someday I want to, not now. I don't want to plant, I don't want to do that tomorrow. I'm young and
like her goat cheese is gonna taste better if she doesn't have to like pack it every day.
Yeah.
Like the champagne line.
yeah.
But I just wanted to comment on the absurdity of her death and how that's kind of my favorite part of the film. Is that you see her in the ditch in the beginning, and you're kind of waiting for her like rapist or serial killer to leave her in that ditch.
Right.
And the whole movie, people are kind of finger wagging at her, like, hey, this is like really unsafe of you. And ultimately, it's like one of society's stupid laws that end up killing her. They dunk her in wine and she freezes to death in winter. And you can see in her face, like, really, like, death by 1,000 cuts, but this is how I'm going out.
Just she tripped over a irrigation pipe or something,
And it's like, for her life is chaos, but for this village, their little routine or whatever is to have chaos for a day, and we're gonna do this, like, pagan wine bath. But, like, if you're not part of that neighborhood, then really it's just like an absurd act of violence, and it fucking kills her.
Absolutely.
And that was kind of my favorite part, is that, the rape was just another day in her life, and you kind of, like, move on, and it's so ghastly, but, in the end, it's like, she's taken out by this stupid Halloween act.
Yeah, where they feel, you see the other woman they're dragging, she's kind of in on it, like she's not as traumatized, I don't think, but they feel like, is she a local? She's fair game to them and their whatever twisted thing they're doing. I don't know.
Yeah, like, they can suspend rules there for a day, but if you're not part of society where then you can go back and recover, like,
Right.
deadly serious.
The old people are closing their windows and choosing not to participate. They're just thrown. So.
Yeah, it's a really good observation around that. This sort of just makes it a little more horrific.
Yeah.
Maybe one or two more comments, I think. Yeah, sure.
I just had a bit of a double question about the right to left camera movement. I noticed it several times in previous viewings, but I noticed it especially on this big screen viewing that Varda really likes to track from right to left and to go with the Vagabond. And I was just curious what y'all's interpretation was of that. And as my double question, I just wanted to ask Mr. Linklater, what would be the top influence from Varda on his work. I've noticed it especially, particularly in this viewing, that the reality of life, the reality of can we just catch what's right here and in the moment. And I just wanted to ask, what particularly y'all thought about the right to left track movement, and to ask
Those tracking shots are very distinct, aren't they? Wes Anderson's got nothing on it. You know, in that documentary I keep talking about, she talks about when they felt that tree. You know, they had one take at that. You know, she said the timing had to be perfect. That shot's a miracle, because even when you cut a tree, you can't totally predict when it's going to fall. If you cut trees, they kind of fall on when they want to fall, and yet it falls just perfectly. You feel the last cut, and then pow, right there. You know, so it's an art form. It's the way she sees it. So, but I think you're just. Yeah, I mean, the Steadicam had been invented. She could have been following her around, all that, but no, more elegant, more, I don't know, just a choice, but I can't read much more into it than that. And as far as influence, you know, it's one of those big questions, you know, just a fan, just love the vibe. So, you know, it's hard to point to any one thing, but certainly love the general approach to cinema and art.
Yeah. Okay, last one, did you?
I was just going to share, if anyone is interested in French actresses, there's a really good book called Beauty of the Real by Linklater. Mm-hmm. Have you read it? Mm-hmm. It's what Hollywood can learn from contemporary French actresses. And it does open with Sandrine Bonnaire and her performance in this movie. But it's a fabulous book and really goes deep into all the French actresses and how their industry is so supportive of all of them. And they really are able to create their own niches, and it's so different from Hollywood. But it's a really good book on French actresses.
And by Mick LaSalle, the San Francisco critic, yeah.
Cool. What was the name of it again, so I can say it?
The Beauty of the Real.
The Beauty of the Real, about French actresses.
Well, great tradition.
So next, on Wednesday.
2 days.
2 days.
Wednesday night.
Howard Brooks.
We're going a whole different way. Just another notion of freedom, I think we could say. Yeah, when Albert Brooks's character doesn't get the promotion he wants, he quits and takes off in a Winnebago for freedom and to find America. It doesn't work out so well for him either. He doesn't end up in a ditch, but in his mind, Albert Brooks is in a worse place than. Anyway, the movie's brilliant. It's just one of the great comedies of the 80s. And, you know, Albert Brooks is just a genius. So it's worth seeing and putting in the context of 80s and culturally and, of course, in his body of work. It's one of his best. And it's just, if you haven't seen it, it's just a staple of comedic culture. You're missing references all the time if you haven't seen this movie. 22.
Great. Well, I'm
People
so
are saying
happy
things that you're not understanding.
I'm so happy you picked Vagabond. And
Yeah,
I
I'm so
can't
happy
believe
to
that
see it
you
again.
picked it, like, given that we just
I know.
lost Miss Varda.
And then that was the farthest thing from my mind. I mean, just seeing her so full of life. I mean, didn't know she was ill the last year, but, you know, I thought she's going to make a great film at 97. You know, I thought she would be the one to do that, but 90, hey, pretty good run, doing great work right up to that time. That's a deal anyone would sign up for. So she had a great life and, you know, made a huge impact.
We'll keep showing her films. We've got another one on the next calendar. We'll tell you more then. But I just love revisiting them on the big screen. And we recently did La Pointe Courte, which is just stunning.
Yeah.
Her first film, which is the one that's on the can poster. And,
Beautiful.
yeah.
So anyway,
but thank you.
Well, thank you guys for being
Yeah,
here.
thanks for coming out.
See you in 2 days.
Yeah, The Wonders from Italy 2014.
Yeah, from the oh yes.